Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with William Shermer about core leadership principles to drive meaning and fulfillment in your team. William Shermer, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, John.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the Pacific Northwest in Washington. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Orem, Utah. And today we're going to be talking about core leadership principles to drive meaning and fulfillment in your team. This topic relates to a couple of your recent books, and I'm really excited to unpack that with you and really explore these common leadership principles and the meaning, purpose, fulfillment that we all seek in our personal lives, as well as in our leadership roles, and that we want for our teams and within our organizations. And I think most people would readily say that these are important elements and that they want them. But it's one thing to say it, it's another thing entirely to do it. And so we're going to try to unpack that and figure out how we can go about doing that. As we get started, I wanted to share William's bio with everybody. William Shermer is a senior management professional in human resources, having been involved with HR talent management and learning and development functions for domestic and international firms over more than 20 years. His expertise includes the creation and deployment of leadership development programs for a number of organizations. He holds USA, UK, and global HR certifications. A wonderful background. It is a pleasure to have you. Anything else you would like listeners to know by way of your background or personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
No, not really. It's covered very well. I sort of fell into HR about 23 years ago or so. I was working as an area manager for a retailer in the UK and really enjoyed all of the personnel side of things. How do you hire good people, good matches for the job and for the organization? How do you bring them on board and get them to be productive and also happy and fulfilled in what they do? Because people who are fulfilled in their work tend to be productive and they tend to stay. So those things sort of morphed themselves a little bit into a career in HR, where I had an opportunity to start my career in the UK, a little bit in consultancy work before I sort of made the switch over into corporate HR, where I've been ever since.
Yeah, that's great. And thank you for that background. And it's a common story. Many people have kind of backed their way into the HR profession through a variety of paths, but that's a common story I hear. Some people, and I teach it at a university in a human resource program. So we graduate students who are specifically getting degrees in HR, and those students certainly have a mindset towards that's the career that they want. But many people find themselves in a roundabout way getting into HR. And I think the field is enriched because of that, the diverse backgrounds that people bring to the table. So William, as we get into this, I know you have a couple of books related to the topic for today. So maybe you could start by just introducing us to those two recent books, and then we can start to unpack the topic a bit.
Yes, certainly. So the first book is called The Leadership Core: Competencies for Successfully Leading Others. And it really grew out of a leadership development program that I had developed and implemented at one organization. And I think most of us think we have a book in us at some point, perhaps not the talent to get it all down on paper. But as I began thinking about the program, I thought, really this is a good primer for many people looking to get into the leadership arena, or perhaps who have just stepped in. And really what I wanted to do is make sure that it was relevant for leaders at all levels. And so it covers several competencies. It starts with character. and then discusses several different competencies which I think are necessary for success. Of course, that unique recipe that makes for successful leaders is never completely agreed upon. Everyone thinks there may be different competencies, and of course that's true depending upon the particular circumstances. But there's several basic competencies that are covered. Things like, how do you recruit? How do you build good teams? What is servancy and stewardship? How do you manage change, and how do you develop people? And the second book grew similarly out of the leadership development program that was designed for people who were taking that first step into leadership. And as I began thinking about the program, I really thought that this was good general advice regarding how to lead a more fulfilling life, perhaps a happier life along the way. And it started with self-management. So in that particular book, which is called Fulfilled, we talk about, again, character, but also delve into other subjects like emotional intelligence and self-awareness, resilience, how to manage stress, how to manage change in your own life, and how to develop yourself. So these sort of form the background and really have become a passion over the last few years in looking at whether you are in the workplace or at home. How do you gain a more fulfilled experience? How do you take some more joy and prosperity out of what you're doing? Again, whether it's in the office or outside of the office.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that is a really important point to make right on the outset. And also what you said about leadership being unique. So we all want fulfillment. We all want to feel like our life matters, that we're doing something important that makes a difference. And that could be, maybe I'm a stay-at-home dad and I'm raising my kids, and that's where I get my meaning and fulfillment. That's great. Maybe I have a successful career. Maybe it's a blend of the two. And there's as many configurations of that as there are people and families, right? And there's just different circumstances. And then the same thing with leaders, different leaders in different contexts with different personalities, different styles. What's going to help them be successful? There's some commonalities, there's some common themes and principles, but largely we have to figure that out for ourselves, so we can be true and authentic in our own leadership approach. So I appreciate you also acknowledging that. Sometimes people, claim that they have kind of the secret sauce of leadership and follow my model and everything's going to unlock for you and be roses and unicorns. And that's just it. Everyone has to go through the iterative process of figuring it out for themselves. And I think that's a healthy exercise to go through, and to continually be self-reflective and introspective about your approach and how that's, in how you're interacting with the people around you, because no two situations are alike. No two work contexts are exactly alike. And so we always have to iterate and adapt and ultimately do what's going to work both for us and for our team.
Yes, that's exactly right. In the book, of course, I have a biased opinion, as it represents years of work, but that you're exactly right. There is no one right way to lead. There is no one best way. And although the book is a primer and talks about certain principles that I think are probably universally well received, it's situational. And the hard reality about leadership is that it isn't taught. At the undergraduate level, for example, no one goes into a college program that says, here's how you're going to become a better leader. And it's taught on the job and through hard experience and through mistakes. And we all make them. Any leader who perhaps is arrogant enough to think that they don't make mistakes or their people don't see them stumbling is just denying reality. And we do that. And it is an iterative process where we learn and our leadership transforms over the course of our career as we not only gain further experience, but we gain further mentoring from others who are going to be able to say, here are some things that I've learned, some mistakes that I've made. And you have to mold all of that into a leadership style that works for you. And that style you're going to carry with you throughout your career, but it's not going to be universally well adapted. You also have to, of course, adapt to the new cultures that you go into with organizations and the changing needs of teams. So that's absolutely correct. It's leading in the military is very different than leading in another environment, for example. And we have to make sure that our leadership is situational and is adaptive.
Quick, kind of silly example of this. I don't know if you've watched the show Ted Lasso, um, but such a wonderful show. I love it, and there's a lot of great kind of principles and themes that come out of that. But again, for anyone, any listener who hasn't seen it, you should check it out on Apple TV. And you have an American tier two, like Division II football coach that ends up being the head coach for a Premier League soccer team in the UK. And it's kind of a case study in like good leadership practices and principles, where you have this person who's completely a fish out of water from the Midwest, who's now in the UK and trying to lead a team in a sport he's never coached ever. Right. Yet somehow, there's magic to it, because he's true to himself and he's adaptable and he's able to adjust right within a new context. So it's a fun show. It's super funny and has some good principles. So you could definitely check it out. But as you were talking about that, I thought of an example like that as someone who is willing to both simultaneously be true to themselves as well as try new things, get out of their comfort zone, adjust and adapt to meet the needs of the new context.
Yes, and being an Arsenal fan, so Ted is a Tottenham coach, and I've seen it. So I spent about 12 years in the UK, and I'm a big soccer fan. And I think what you get from that sort of example is authentic leadership. You get what you get with Ted, and it's warts and all. And he's not perfect, certainly out of his element at first, but there are some universal principles around how to lead authentically and with your heart in the right place, certainly. And that's absolutely true. And I think servant leadership too espouses some of those things. The fact that as leaders, we have to be a resource for our people. We're not just sitting in the corner office directing them. We have to be part of the solution.
Yeah. And so that's where I wanted to go next. You already, as you were introducing the two books, you introduced a few concepts already, one of them being servant leadership, and you talked about stewardship. In my mind, those are foundational pieces that I think would apply just about in any leadership setting. Yet they're kind of some of those elusive pieces that you don't see a lot of leaders in a corporate setting actually having or exhibiting very much. Tell us a little bit more about what you think in terms of stewardship, in terms of servant leadership. Why is that so important, and why is that one of those cross-contextual principles that's going to help us be successful? I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations.
Yeah, I think it's largely misunderstood. I think servant leadership is seen as being this sort of kinder, gentler form that's fuzzy, that's easy on performance management issues, that doesn't really demand as much of people. And that's quite simply not the case. Servant leadership is really an acknowledgement, and it's more of a general philosophy. It's an acknowledgement that as a leader, yes, you certainly have a degree of positional power. You do direct resources and get results through the work of others. But you have to realize that after setting expectations and communicating them, that you then have to be a resource. You have to be part of the solution and not perhaps having a degree of humility that allows you to roll up your sleeves and get down in the dirt with your people and help them realize that you will do what is necessary to help them. And at times, of course, you're going to act in a position that might seem uh, almost subordinate. For instance, a leader doesn't have all the right answers, and a leader shouldn't expect that. You hire experts in your team, and you expect that in certain situations that they might take the lead, that they may be the best person to actually lead a project or initiative. And it takes a degree, again, of humility and of realism for leaders to realize that and to actually understand that they're using the collective resources of their people to get results. It doesn't mean that they lead from the front all the time in every case or that they have all the answers. And I think the good leaders, the most progressive ones, realize that. And their pride and their ego isn't threatened by the fact that they can ask questions, not know all the answers, and use the expertise of their people really well. So I am a big fan of the servant leadership philosophy in general. I think that it's a healthy way of weaving a good sense of humility into leadership. And people expect that. It's a real big turnoff for individuals who see leaders leading with an arrogant approach, not admitting mistakes, making up answers that they don't know. For example, isn't it easier just to say, I don't know, I'll find out for you, for example, or perhaps someone
And then
else.
gaslighting later, right? When things don't work out right. And yeah. So yeah,
Yeah,
those types of things happen. And I completely agree. I think taking more of a servant leader approach, that doesn't mean we're a pushover. That doesn't mean you have to um, just always give people a pat on the shoulder or give them a good job and never have those difficult conversations with them. It just means that you're being a resource, that you're authentically caring about your people and trying to support them, right? And unfortunately, a lot of leaders and a lot of organizations, that runs counter to what they've seen, the examples they've had in their career. And a lot of people, like you said, they haven't been trained up in leadership, and so it's they do what they've seen other people model. And so if they've had mentors over time or people they've looked up to, then they just start to do the same things they've seen other people do. And a lot of times they've had bad examples. And so arrogance and false bravado and those sorts of things are super common. And I think leaders sometimes think that's what's expected of them, not realizing that they're undermining their own credibility with their people. Unnecessarily so. They're shooting themselves in the foot. If and they may even be a fairly humble person, but they portray themselves in a way that it seems more arrogant, or they have this false bravado, and it is a turnoff to most people most of the time.
it is, yes. No one wants to work in that sort of environment where they feel devalued, that their opinions don't count, and where they feel a lack of respect. And that's right. I think especially early in leadership careers, first level supervisors will pick up on the leadership style of others, including executives in the culture, and think that leadership is about telling people what to do. And that's quite simply not the case. And in terms of our earlier discussion, people want to find purpose, meaning, and significance at work. They want to feel fulfilled. And a leader that makes them feel small and unimportant won't deliver on that. And people are going to leave. They're not going to leave for money. They'll find more money along the way, but they're going to leave quite simply because they spend a lot of their waking hours at work, whether it's from their home or in the office, and they want to be treated well. And I think that's what one of the biggest lessons we can teach first level leaders is it's still about having a high standard in terms of your expectation for performance and behavior, and to make sure you uphold it. But you also have to respect everyone along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And I appreciate the tie-in back to fulfillment. Another principle that you mentioned was stewardship. Can you unpack that for us a little bit?
Yes, another concept I think that's important. As leaders, we don't own talent. We don't own the people in our teams, and oftentimes there is either the system within organizations or our own sense of self-preservation as leaders causes us to hold our people back. We don't want to lose the superstar in our team because it will be harder for us to hit our goals, to earn that bonus, whatever it may be. And the fact is, as leaders, we have to understand that we're just taking care of the talent while it happens to be with us in our team, and to prepare it for the next step in one's career. And that's really the concept of stewardship, is an acknowledgement that we want to leave things in a better place than we found them, including people's careers. And I think that's not celebrated enough within organizations, that leaders who are good people developers and who are good stewards for talent will be a conveyor belt for talent within the organization. And they really should be recognized and rewarded for that.
Yeah, I think the stewardship piece is so important. And I think of one specific example in my career. Many listeners know for a time I was on the board of directors of the HR Certification Institute, a really rewarding, wonderful opportunity, a great group of people. You have a bunch of HR certifications. You probably have some HRCI certifications. And I was struck by the very first board meeting that I attended. The board chair, in conjunction with the CEO, sitting there and explaining to us exactly what you just said, the stewardship role of each individual board member, in our responsibility to leave the company better off for the work that we do. And that simultaneously means we need to support each other and lift each other up so that we can each have better contributions, and that we are constantly thinking about how do we leave our team, how do we leave our situation, our work arrangement in a better place than it was when we started. And that was reinforced over and over and over again. It wasn't the first time I'd heard it, or the first time I'd seen it, but it was the first time that I'd seen it consistently in practice over and over and over again, a dominant theme in everything that we did. And it was meaningful. And so when you bring together the servant leadership piece, the stewardship piece, and there are others as well, but for now we can kind of focus on those two. When we have those as leaders, those competencies and capabilities, it really does feed directly into how we're going to create a more dynamic team and organization where people do have the opportunity to feel fulfilled, that they have meaning and purpose, that they're doing something important each and every day. And it doesn't matter if you're making widgets on an assembly line, if you're selling real estate, if you're catching fish or working at Google or whatever, right? Like, you can have that meaning, that fulfillment, that purpose in any type of job, in any organization, as long as there's an intentionality around it and a focus of leaders trying to create that environment.
Absolutely. Very true. And as a matter of fact, it's one of our primary acts in leadership that we need to undertake, is to help our people find that purpose, meaning, and significance. And of course, it's not only written into things like mission statements and vision statements within organizations. They are oftentimes they're rather grandiose and aspirational, but we're talking about the things that people do every day in the team. So, for instance, in a banking organization, you might say to a loan officer, yes, you make loans. Or you might say, one of the primary things that you do is you help other people fulfill their financial dreams, including homeownership, by providing them access. And to tell the stories of how you have individually impacted other people's lives. And by doing these sorts of things, people are drawing more meaning from what might seem an everyday occurrence. The Fred Factor, for example, written by Mark Sanborn, is a classic case of this, of literally a postman taking more meaning from his job through creative ways to deliver better service to his customers. And his customers were delighted, as a matter of fact. So it's incredibly important as leaders that we find out what our people find most meaningful or what they aspire to, and then to help connect doing the work to fulfilling those aims, and to create a connection between what they're doing and doing well and impact. Because we want to make sure, of course, along the way, the bottom line is to make sure people perform, but we want people to feel good about performing and to let them know that performing is more than just about the bottom line, more than about commercial success for their employer, because that's not going to inspire anyone to get up out of bed and to fight traffic in the morning. They want to take more meaning from that, and they want to author the story of their own lives. So that's really what good leadership is about, including servant leadership, is including people in the narrative of their work lives.
I love it. I love it. William, it has been a real pleasure. I note the time. I'm going to have to let you go here in a minute so you can get on with your busy day. But before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, where they can find your books, and anything else you would like to say by way of closing remarks before we wrap up.
Of course, yeah, I certainly appreciate it. So people can get a hold of me through my website, which is willshermerofficial.com. They can also find me on Instagram, Will Shermer Official as well. Will Shermer 1 on Twitter. I'm on Facebook as Will Shermer Official also. So there's a few different ways to get a hold of me. And of course, the book, the first book is out now. The second book, which is Fulfilled, Finding Joy and Prosperity in Life, that is actually out in ebook next month and in print in April. And a third book is on the way as well. Those that are interested in leading, I would tell you, certainly there's no one right way. And what I often say is that in order to move hands and feet, you need to capture hearts and minds. So I think as leaders, we need to remember that, and remember that it's all about emotion. It's all about how people feel about their work experience and feel about working with you. So if you manage that, you're going to manage a really good experience for your people and see good performance along the way.
Wonderful. Well said, William. It's been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what William and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week. Check out our new weekly LinkedIn newsletter, Alchemizing Human Capital, exploring industry trends via original research and interviews with executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We look forward to having you join us.